the last question of the homework refer to a comparison between two systems, between RNS and signed digit representation. And the question was to see which one of those is kind of better, than to compare them. And you are given a radix 8 signed digit representation with digit set -5, 8, and also an RNS system. And you are asked to compute and compare the range, then to represent two integers and do the addition. This should be in principle a simple question. No, that's the one. Then if I want to compute the smallest number in the signed digit stuff, I should assume that all the digits are -5 because the dynamic range is -5, 4. Then -5 times whatever I get from 4 digits, it will give me that much. If I go to the positive, is 4 times, which is the maximum digit, positive digit value, again times the weights for the position, will give me that much. Then, roughly speaking, we deal about 5,000 something possible numbers. If I go for RNS, the dynamic range of the RNS is the product of the moduli. And if I want to be again kind of fair, then I look for negative and positive numbers. I will split that in 2. And I will say that I will have, it's asymmetric because it's complement kind of things. Then for negative numbers, I have 1 extra combination. And then you see that the dynamic range of the RNS system is a lot larger. Okay? That was the first question. The second question was to represent those numbers. And then to do the addition of them, you know. Now, because you have a redundant representation, you can have more representations of some numbers, and those are my solutions. And this is the representation of 441, this is the representation of -228. If I want to add them, what I do is what we just discussed previously. I compute the position sum, which can be done in parallel. And then I have a problem with -5, which I do here some kind of, you know, rewriting. And then I have intermediate sum and transfer. The only problem is with this guy. And then I am in business. I have more opportunities, I would say, because the system is redundant and I could represent them in a different way. And I can put here some positive value and subtract from here and get a different representation. When I'm looking for the other one, it's just this is the representation. You know, you compute the moduli of those two numbers. This is simple. This is complement kind of stuff. And when you do the addition is on each channel modulo whatever. Then this is 12 plus 9 modulo 16. This is 15. Then this is, I would say, does not really need special attention, in my view. Okay? I hope you managed to solve this problem, if you tried. Okay. Are there any questions related to the homework? This is a new kind of method that I'm applying lately. Previously, I was just giving you the solution without spending time in the class discussing the solution. Apparently, your colleagues from last year were very happy about that. Now, if you are happy too, I'll continue. If you think it's a waste of time, I'll concentrate on other things. No, you don't think it's a waste of time. No? The more time I spend in explaining you those, the less time I get to teach you new material. This is called engineering optimization, correct? Then the less material I cover in the class, the easier will be the exam. This is the wrong assumption. This is what is called a sophism. You know, syllogism, which is making connections between sentences. This is not a true connection. Then guys, you have questions. Apparently not. You are a bit apathic. You should be happy. Computer arithmetic is a flamboyant kind of field. Yes?
For the previous question.
Sorry?
Will the solutions be on Blackboard?
They are on Blackboard already since yesterday night.
No.
Come on, I put them there.
They're the second term of science.
Okay, I'll check that. I released them last night together with the second homework assignment. You cannot see them.
Well, the second term of assignment is on Blackboard.
Then I released them both last night. Second and solutions of the first. I'll check that.
It might be that you have the visibility settings are not correct.
No. Okay, I'll check that. That's okay. It's good that you told me. It's good that you told me. Okay. I was doing other things also. I'll see. Then you had a question. But it's too late. I asked you before, right?
What's the function of the ignore bit?
Sorry?
Ignore bit.
No, this you don't care, because this is a carry out of a 2's complement addition, which you don't care. You don't look at it. Then when you do 2's complement addition, the carry out has no value. You just use it to see if there is a kind of error. Then you use that together with another carry, and this will give you an overflow. Okay, I'll check whatever happened with the solution. I was sure they were available. Okay. What should we talk about? We'll talk about traffic. Okay? I just got a big fine from the Dutch police for speeding. You know, the Dutch system is very nice. They have an exponential kind of fines. You know, in Germany, if you do speeding, if you are, I think, a couple of kilometers is 10 euros. In the Netherlands, if you do speeding and you are a couple of kilometers is couple of 10 euros. And if you do more, it's a couple of 100 euros. Okay, now it's a kind of speeding also here, but it's within the legal speed. Then the idea of the carry skip addition is to try to use faster roads towards the most significant bit whenever they are available. Then, if I have a block of bits and I compute for that block the propagate for each position, I can compute now the propagate for the block. Then if all positions are propagating, the block is propagating. You see, now I don't care about generate. What I care for is for propagate. Now, if a block is propagating, I know the carry out of this block immediately after I know it's propagating. I don't have to go through and to see the calculation and pass it further. Now I can use that in order to speed up the addition in a different way than we did with prefix headers. Now I have to make an analysis on how to implement that and what will be the delay of such a construction. But the basic idea is that whenever this block is not propagating, a carry coming into the block or the carry generated the carry coming into the block will not go further than the block. It might be that the block will generate a carry, but this has no relation whatsoever with the previous one. Then what I am doing is, instead of allowing the carry to ripple from the beginning to the end and wait for the worst case, I'm trying to speculate on the fact that some of the blocks will actually not propagate, and some of them will propagate. And I will build an adder which will look like this. Then I take a ripple carry adder, which is a standard carry adder, simple, no complications. I will add to that, I should go on full screen. Why don't you suggest that? Does it make a difference? Not really. Then I will augment that adder with two things. I will have to compute the propagate for each position, which will take me one level of gates. And then I will have to compute the propagate for each block. This will take me another gate, and it will be an AND gate. Now, the carry out into the block will be selected by the signal, which is called block propagate. Whenever the block is propagating, the carry will come from the input of that block and will go further. Okay? Then if I have a carry here, we'll just skip the block and we'll go further. If the block is not propagating, this channel is closed, and if a carry will come, will be the carry out of that block. Now, you see, I have full adders inside, which will do ripple carry addition per 4 big blocks. And I can compute the propagate, not as an XOR, but now it will be an OR. Because it won't make sense to compute it as an XOR, because those are standard full adders. Now, this is how things will be looking inside if I want to do an implementation. And there are two ways to do that. You can use a max or you can use a gate. If you go for the old edition of the book, I think you just have this one. If you go for the new edition, you have this one. Essentially here, you could use a gate, not a max. But that one will have a problem because we'll propagate some kind of wrong carries whenever you don't start from scratch. And if you go for the gate-based implementation, you always have to reset your adder from one addition to the next one. And what you use in practice is the max-based implementation. Remember, maxes can be built very simple with transmission gates. They are not that complicated. Now, let us try to see what is now the worst case for such a construction. When I deal with a ripple carry adder, the worst case is when I have, no, that's a different story, is when I have a carry starting from here and traveling until the end. Now, this is not any longer the worst case. Because if I have such a situation, actually I will skip all the blocks. Then if I have the worst case of the ripple carry, I skip this block, I skip this block, I skip this block, I skip this block, I skip this block. Then this is the best case by going, you know, on the highway. Now the worst case will be, you can try to make an analysis, but this is the worst case. Whenever you have a carry which is generated inside this block, let's say on the first position, will travel all the blocks except the last one. It's the worst case. Because if it will travel less, we'll die earlier. If it will travel over all the blocks, then will be a lot of skips and not very much propagation. then the worst case that you can assume now it's a carry which is appearing on the least significant position, not a carry in. This block is not propagating. All the blocks but the last one are again propagating. And this is your worst delay. Then by applying that scheme, now I can see that my critical path will have b minus 1 steps in here when I'm propagating. I will have a number of skips. Now if I divide my operand in k over b blocks, then where k is the number of bits and p is the width of the block, those are the number of skips, k over b minus 1, and then I will have again b minus 1 propagation within the most significant block. Not b, because if I have b, I go around. Then this is the worst case delay. Now I can make some calculation, then I can apply some kind of knowledge from, what is that called, analysis, mathematical analysis. Then I apply a derivative, and I'm looking now for the optimum number of bits per block. Then I said I have b bits in a block. And then I can compute the number of bits, which will be the square root of k over 2. And then I can also compute the optimal delay for that. Now, if I look for this will give me 13 stages. Then if I had a 32-bit adder, which is very much like a ripple carry adder, I have very small overhead, but instead of computing in 32 stages for the worst case, I compute in 13 stages for the worst case. Then I got an improvement, a fundamental improvement, without having the overhead of having the prefix kind of calculation and that kind of things. It's not that much. I mean, if I go for a prefix calculation, I'll get more, but I'll invest more. Now, if I look at this scheme, there is something which might take my attention or give me a hint. If you look at the critical path, the delay on the critical path is dominated by two things. By the number of bits in the first and the last block, because here you have some ripples, and by the number of blocks. Now, I can also distribute bits per blocks in an uneven way. Now we assume that each block has b over k over b. No, each block has b bits. So then I would have k over b blocks, and all of them are of equal width. Now, if I minimize the number of bits here and the number of bits here, I will actually win. But I have to stay within the same budget. Then if I'm pushing on the most and the least significant blocks to diminish the number of bits, and I want to keep the same number of blocks, I have to absorb whatever I'm pushing from here, I have to absorb inside. And this will bring me to another idea, which is a follow-up of this, when I skip with variable number of bits per block. And intuitively speaking, this will help me because I have the same number of blocks, but the contribution of the skip here and there is diminished. Now, I have to be sure that I design it in a proper way, because I am relying on the fact that whatever input operands I have, I can safely read the result after, let's say, the delay of certain stages, as here, or less stages, as it will be the case. Then I have to be sure that whatever is happening in all situations, my calculation will be always legitimate. Then I complete the calculation in due time. Now, if I apply this technique, then now my blocks are distributed in an uneven way, and then I start with blocks which are narrower and I increase the number of bits in the middle, I can get to a different kind of optimal constants for the delay and for k. And this will give me the actual delay that I can get by playing with those bits. Now, I think it will be actually better. Okay. Okay, we'll revisit this issue just for you to understand on an example. But practically, as I said, I diminish the number of bits on the boundaries, and I'm pushing bits in the middle, and I have to dimension them in such a way that I am guaranteeing the completion of the calculation. And I will go to the example and I'll explain you on the example because it will become more intuitive. Now, I can apply this concept even further. You see, the first one is whenever I have one level of skip, it's unbalanced, then each block will have a different number of bits, and I have highways which will allow me to skip bits, to skip blocks. You see that the more bits I have in a block, the more complex the gate which is computing the block propagate. Because, let's say if I make a comparison with traffic, you have the normal road, you have the national road, and you have what is called highway. You know, in US, a highway is not what we call a highway in Europe. In US, freeway, it's a highway. Then the discussion in the book might be a bit confusing. But what I'm saying is that nobody is stopping me of thinking further and combining now blocks in group of blocks that I can skip. Then I can have two levels of skip. Actually, I can have as many as I want. But eventually things will not be advantageous if I push it too much. And what we see here is that we essentially take three blocks, we combine them in a mega block, and whenever all those three are skipped, I can go, you know, I can take the freeway and go like that. And I can make combinations. This is a kind of hybrid stuff. Because you see, if the block is narrow, the investment to determine whether or not to skip the block may not pay back. And what you see here is that this block, which is very narrow, I'm not skipping. I just propagate in here. This I skip. In here I have a big block which I'm skipping, but in here, this one which is small, I'm not skipping. Now, the concept, it's kind of twofold. I'm skipping blocks whenever I can, and I can apply that on a hierarchical level. And the second item is I am placing bits in blocks in such a way that I'm optimizing the delay. Because mostly the blocks which are on the boundaries are contributing to the delay, there I use less bits. I have, however, to distribute the bits inside the other in such a way that I always get the right calculation. And let us look now to an example, because this will help us to understand. Then I am trying to make an adder which will compute the solution after 8 time units. I make some assumptions, and I make the assumption that the generator of PNG takes one gate level, the generator of the block propagate takes another level, the ripple in the full adder takes also one level. Those are assumptions which do not really capture the reality, because a ripple in a full adder, it's actually slightly longer. But to simplify the discussion, I assume that all the delays which are relevant for the discussion are unitary delays. Now, what I want is I want to see how many bits I can add with such a scheme in 8 time units, which means that I am distributing those in blocks. I have 7 blocks, and because I want to have the calculation in 8 time units, I have to be sure that the carry out of this will be available in 8 time units, and all other sum bits into the system are also available into 8 time units. If one of them is coming later, my design is not good. I'm assuming the inputs are coming at time moment 0, and then, I'm going further. Now, I have inputs. Because I have inputs, it will take me 1 moment to compute these for the digits, and 1 moment for the block. Then let's say the selection for this block, which is a skip block, will be available after 2 units. Now, because this is available after 2 units, an eventual carry, which is coming from here, will become available here after 1 more unit. Then first of all, I will try to see if things are okay whenever I'm completely skipping the structure. Then a carry which was here, if this block is skipping, will arrive at time unit 3. 2 times units to produce the propagate and 1 unit to skip. The next one will take me 1 more unit, then 4, 5, 6, 7, and then when I have this, I can compute the carry out in 1 more unit, which is telling me already that this block cannot be longer than 1 bit. Then in the best case, when I have a carry moving all over the place, that can appear here no earlier than 7. This is now my best case kind of addition. And if this is coming at 7, I have 1 more time unit in order to compute the carry out. Now, this is one story. The other story relates to whatever the blocks are doing. Now, this block, it's block 5. Block 5 should even propagate a carry, then I have no problem, or absorb a carry which may come in time unit 6. Okay? If it is a carry coming from the least significant position, will come at time unit 6. If it is coming from another position, will come later. But let us look now on the completion. Because the carry is coming in the worst case in time unit 6, and it's not skipping the block, then this one is not propagating. This block cannot have more than 2 bits. Because 7, I can ripple in the first position, 8, I ripple in the second position, and I'm done with the calculation. If I put here 1 more bit, that one will require an extra thing. Then I will have to ripple until 9. Then there is a limitation on the number of bits per block due to the completion of the calculation. When I get a carry, I have to have enough time to complete the sum within the block before the deadline. And then because this is getting, in the worst case, a carry on time 6, whenever it's going around all of those, if the carry is not skipping, then it comes from this and may come earlier. Okay? Then this block cannot have more than 2 positions. Now, the same story kind of will apply for this. Then this one can get at 5. The block is not skipping. Because it's not skipping, it has 3 time units in order to complete the calculation. Now, this will have 4. And now I will have to take care that things are okay for the completion, but also okay for the generation. Now, you know, we look on the completion, we look on the generation on the longest critical path, but we also have to look on the generation from inside blocks. Let us look at this block 4. If block 4 is skipped by a carry coming from this place, that carry will come here at moment 4, which will give this block enough time to complete the calculation. And I dimension it in such a way that this can be done. Now, I have to be sure that if the carry is not skipping the block, but is generated from inside the block, that one will occur here no later than time moment 4. And this will determine the number of bits that I have for this block. I can put 4 bits here. If the carry is not skipping, then it can appear at the position 0, ripple, and come here in moment 4. Then what I have to do is to check for each and every block the number of bits that will allow me the completion whenever a carry is coming. And I know the timestamp for the worst case arrival of the carry. That's one thing. And the other thing is to check whenever the block is generating a carry within the restriction for the carry generation for the next block. The restriction is determined by the highway. And in this way, if I check that all the blocks are okay, then doesn't matter what's happening, the carry is skipping or the carry is generated inside. I have no timing violation, I'm in business. And this is one distribution which is not giving me timing violation. Clear? Kind of, right? There are two phenomena. One is the propagation of the carry and the completion of the carry out of the addition, because this is the longest path in a ripple carry, remember? Then I have to look on that. And the other one is to budget the number of bits per block in such a way that in the worst case, the calculation of the sum bits in that blocks will complete before the deadline. And with that many blocks, I can add maximum 18 bits in 8 time units. If I want to add more than 18, it won't be possible. I have to add an extra block. But what I see as a principle is that the blocks are kind of following that kind of, okay, you can put it like that. Then on the boundaries they are shorter, in the middle they are longer. Because in the middle they get more time to absorb things, and they also can generate in the right way. Okay, I can do the same kind of reasoning now for a two-level skip. And using the same principle of thinking, I can determine the number of bits that I can add, again in 8 units, with 2 levels. And what you see is the fact that I add another level will bring me to 30 bits. Now, this is a theoretical result. It's based on some assumptions which are not 100% correct in reality, but the principle will function. Now, I'm applying the same reasoning mechanism to the first level of skip. Now I'm splitting the bits in big blocks because I have 2 levels of skip. Now the propagate signal for this one will take 3 units. Then propagate for the bit, propagate for the first level, propagate for the second level. Based on this, the arrival here will be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. More than 8, I cannot. Based on this kind of calculation, now I can see how late can I produce a carry, you see? I can produce a carry from this block at moment 6, but not later, because if I'm producing later, this block will not have time to assimilate. And I have 3 units to assimilate the carry which is coming from here. The worst case for carry is coming on 5, and until 8, I have 3 units. This is the same reasoning we did before. Now, this is the first, and now if I go for each block, I can apply the same technique and see how I distribute them. Okay? And this is the distribution, how I do it. As you see, the blocks on the first level are larger, but inside here, the granularity is kind of the same, and also the pattern is kind of the same. Then by investing on a faster road, I get a better result. Then now I can add in the same delay 30 bits. And as I said, I can invest in another road, you know, I can even take an airplane, and things will go even faster. But there are limitations of that because my assumptions are kind of simplified assumptions. Okay. What else we have here? Okay, this is a kind of representation about, it's the same story, right? That when you have a carry, you have to have the time to assimilate, and also you have to generate the carry within these restrictions. And there are some formulas, and you can determine the number of bits. Essentially, you don't do that by hand. What we do in practical situations is we make that kind of model for the block, you know, where we put the, practically we take implementations at layout level, we extract parameters, we get the real number of the delays, scale delay, propagate delay, generate delay, and things like that, and we use a nice piece of software which is giving us the best distribution of the bits over the domain. Unfortunately for exam, you won't have that, and you most likely will have a question about how to design such a system, but it won't be very complicated. I won't give you to design a 1,000,000-bit carry skip adder. I'm not that sadistic. Even though, you know, being Romanian, I should be a vampire, right? Hmm? You know Dracula, I assume. Was he a vampire or not? Hmm? Hmm? What do you think? He was just a cruel prince. He was very tough on the Turks. He was called Vlad the Impaler. Do you know what impaling means? Okay. He was not exactly friendly. Okay, I still have some time, and I would like to take a look on the last. And basically, the previous scheme is also kind of giving logarithmic performance. Now, which one we use in practice depends on many other parameters. I see it's boring, you are tired, but we are almost there. Another way to do addition, and this is a principle which is utilized not only in arithmetic, it's utilized in computer architecture in general, is to do speculation. You know, when you do branch prediction, you actually speculate on a branch outcome, and then you compute, assuming that that branch is correct. But there is also another way to speculate on the branch outcome, to compute in both directions. And whenever you know the result of the branch, you commit in the good direction. This is more expensive. You are familiar with that, right? You follow computer architecture. I was also teaching some of the classes. Okay? Probably not that. No, I don't remember. Now, what we do in computer arithmetic is to do speculation on the carry. Then if I have a k-bit addition, I split it into parts. For the first part, which is the least significant part, I know the carry, and there is no speculation. But for the second part, I don't know the carry yet. What I can do is to compute the carry into two possible scenarios. whenever carry is 0 and whenever carry is 1. Then, when I complete the k over 2-bit addition for the least significant position, I know the outcome. And I can use that carry now to make a selection on the right value. What I did is I transformed a k-bit complex problem into a k over 2-bit complex problem plus a delay of the max. Then what cost me now are 3 k over 2-bit adders and a k over 2-bit max, and I got the solution. Now you can already see that I can apply that at many levels, and I can say, okay, k over 2-bit is maybe too complicated, it's too difficult to do that, then I can also try to split in k over 4 bits. Again, the first block is always the one which is in a better position. That was true also for carry look ahead. Because I know the carry, I don't speculate on it. For the others, I have to speculate. The difference between what we had before and what we have now is that I will need 2 levels of multiplexing in order to construct the result. Then whenever I know the output of this one, I can determine from those. And also in the same time, I can combine those two. There is still a speculative combination, but based on the carry out from this block, I can determine whatever will come here. And then this will be one level, and the other level will complete the selection on the most significant half part with another multiplexer. Then what you see is that before I had on a critical path delay k over 2-bit addition plus a max. Now I have k over 4 addition plus 2 maxes. If I make it smaller, this one I have more maxes. There is a sweet point where this makes sense and not any further. Because if you push it too much, this may be dominant. There is, however, a scheme which is called conditional sum adder, which is actually pushing the divide et impera down to 1-bit level. Then you do speculation and each bit. Then essentially your critical path will be determined by a long string of maxes. Then you just have addition with speculative addition per bit position and then selections going down. But you can do, it's not really dependent on the number of bits, because as you see, that selection is like a tree. Okay, then I start with 4, I have 2 maxes here, then I'm making selection and I'm making again my final selection. Then the delay of the scheme, it's logarithmic. Then with that kind of approach, I'm always getting into a logarithmic delay. And in here you have an example on how this is functioning, on how I'm computing for each and every bit position, the sum and the carry, with the speculative idea that carry from the previous position is 0 or 1. And you see that after some levels of multiplexing, I arrive to the solution. And each time, the number of bits that I'm selecting is doubling. Then it's a logarithmic construction. Okay, now you see here how there is this combination, you see. I computed independently the sum for 4 bits, assuming 0, 1, 0, 1. And now when I'm combining them in a multiplication step, whenever there is a 0, I take this first, which will result in a carry of 0, which will select that one. And whenever it's 1, I take this one, which results in 1, which will take this one. It could have been also the other way around. Actually, this is a wrong example, because it gives you the impression that I'm selecting them row-wise. but they are not really row-wise, they are based on the carry-out. Then assuming that here would have been a carry-out of 1, the padding would have been this with this. Just a couple of words about the fact that nobody precludes me to combine the ingredients. Then we know a couple of techniques. Carry look ahead, prefix, carry select, and we can make hybrids. And this is a combination of carry select and look ahead. What this is trying to do is trying to make this selection tree shorter. Essentially, you do some look ahead, and then you have only one selection because you know all the carries. It's a standard look ahead. The disadvantage is that you create some kind of irregularity. Okay, we don't care for those. This is another kind of combination. You do carry look ahead and you serialize things. Then each of those is based on look ahead and you make them serial. Those are solutions which might be good for energy consumption, and there are always trade-offs. Okay, just one second and I'm done with that. What we assume is that the arrival of the inputs is kind of uniform. This is true whenever your adder is your ALU unit. Whenever the adder is part of a multiplier, the arrival of the inputs might be kind of different, and this is an arrival profile for a multiplier. Then in a multiplier, you essentially have one stage which is doing partial product reduction, and another stage which is finalizing the sum. And bits which are in the least significant position are coming earlier than bits which are in the most significant position. That can be utilized in optimization. Okay, I think I have to stop, even though I have another slide that I want to talk about. But no. Otherwise you'll be upset. I'll finish that story on Wednesday.